I made a decision, and it's something new that hasn't happened thus far in any of these episodes. I decided to intentionally not take a shower, comb my hair, do anything. I'm wearing clothes, but added caveat, this was a shirt I wore last night. He's the world's greatest love. Why am I doing this, Neil? Why am I just rolling out of bed to do a podcast? Because I don't know. I think that's the truth about fatherhood. I'm going to paraphrase an old acting coach I had who said, acting is not something you comb your hair or brush your teeth for. And I think that's true about fatherhood. You are just in it. It happens whether you're prepared or not. And, I got a haircut recently, and it's one of those things where I didn't look so bad. I was like, do I need to do this? I took a shower yesterday. This is one of my nice shirts. I'm okay. I'm okay. You're okay. We're all gonna be okay. And that's my message to you by rolling out of bed and doing this podcast is that if you're present, you're present. There's no perfect moment to do it. It's not like the time is right now. I'm all of a sudden a dad. Dude, remember leaving the hospital? We didn't want to leave the hospital. We were like, no, we're not ready to go yet. Can we just stay? And they're like, it's time to go. And then you're like, but nurse, can a nurse come with us? Can someone come along? God, I remember that feeling well. And then you're like, you're driving off. You're like, wow, here we go, off into the world.
I do remember that. And I remember specifically in our case, we talk about we very much felt like teen parents. We were in our 30s. And I think part of it is probably us, but also having a kid in New York. I don't know if it was so different in LA, but we would have this experience going to the doctor's appointments, and everyone in the waiting room just felt like a man and a woman. It was like some woman. I will say we were on the Upper East Side. That's where the hospital was, and it was just these men who were I run a business, and I'm, it was a big deal that they were even there at the appointment. And, my wife and I were just kind of yeah, we're having a kid. So yes, I very much relate to then finally when, at the hospital, and driving, our daughter home, just being is this okay? She's ours now? Are you, that she was we were getting permission from the grown-up nurses to take her.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
I have to say, what you're talking about is a stark difference from me leaving Kaiser Permanente on Sunset Boulevard in East Hollywood. It was definitely not so well heeled. I remember when you said, hey, I'm a business owner and I've got this. You had that. The guy I had was, and this was actually in one of the, they'd have these classes, getting ready to have your kid. And so, the person would be like, hey, does anyone have any questions? And homie raised his hand and he goes, when the baby comes out of the mother's stomach, and me and my wife are laughing, and she's like, does he mean the uterus? I'm like, no. The baby comes out of the tummy after the stork dropped it off. I was so into this dude's narrative and his, so he had a very different approach in all this stuff. I don't know what he did for a living, but it definitely, I felt I definitely wasn't necessarily so much intimidated. I also, by the other kind of parents or whatever, I was more just kind of in panic mode. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? It's kind of a bit of a panic mode, but I kind of seized the moment as well. That was another one of those moments where I was I had, gone out the night before, and then around, late middle of the night, my wife's like, oh, we gotta go. And I was like, okay, You know what I mean? So, and then that was like a Saturday night, and then my son was born Monday morning. So that was a long stretch in the old hospital there. But yeah, there's so many things that kind of mark the experience that maybe you didn't, I don't know if you planned to be in the Upper East Side Hospital. I didn't really plan to be in the hospital in East Hollywood. That was just where our insurance was going to take us. But it actually worked out pretty good, I guess.
It
Felt like
was
we were
very
going
much
here.
planned. Yes, we in fact had a planned C-section. Not because we're
Mm,
just like those types who are just so busy and can't be bothered, and we need to fit it in our schedule. It was a medically required planned C-section, and my
yeah,
wife wanted to make that clear to other people that she was not being a diva. This was prescribed
yeah.
that given her fibroid situation. Anyway, why am I giving my wife's medical history here?
This
This
is
feels like
what
a HIPAA
we're
call.
here to do is to violate HIPAA because that's what you just did. I didn't ask, you told, and
Yeah,
now
I
it's out in the
volunteered.
internet.
And now I'm going to
Um,
be subpoenaed. But real quick, talking about the guys, I remember being in the hospital. I found that there was those classes, again, it's like what happens when you bring your baby home? And there was like a guy there who in the breastfeeding class had like a lot of questions, like like to you, we thought like, are we being pranked? Like this guy kept saying, but with the latch. What happened? And look, obviously, it's nice that he's trying to be a part of it, but I do remember my wife and some of the other women just being like, this guy has a lot of questions about breasts and breastfeeding and how it all works. And it's like, kind of know your role. Like, you're kind of here just as backup.
totally.
Uh,
Totally. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's it is funny like there's, women are probably have had more experience with the workings of their body. And then here we are and you're like, "Whoa, there's a lot of stuff going on." I feel like at one point it's worth noting for everyone who's watching the pod that we both look like we're like doing like sketch news because we both have maps of the world behind us. It's just the framing, we've had to do a little shuffling, and I think it's really funny. It's like, and now more breaking news from Afghanistan.
beep, 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 beep. There
You
could
know,
not be anything less newsworthy than World's Greatest Dad with Ali Khan. No
I
offense.
I do not know why either of us felt the need to have the world map on the wall,
I
except
just
that
gotta know where I am, what's going on.
like it's so
But this
crazy.
becomes the situation room actually later, when the kids go to bed, we're just kind of like, what about here? And we're like, what's going on? Does this territory still like this territory? Lots of crazy strategy going on.
I did this is it's just completely insane because of the sun and daylight savings time. I've shifted my frame. I had a couple other things in the background, but now it literally looks like we're like two idiots telling the news. Like which I think, could be a spin-off. So, keep subscribing to this one, but also consider our humorous take on the geopolitical theater with Neil and Ali.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I
It's
will say
crazy.
this is not a news show. It's a dad show. What does that mean? It's a show with dads, for dads, about dads.
Yeah.
What is dad? Anyway, so any news is going to intersect with like being a dad, and I will tell you, I have a news item, uh, on that theme, in that vein for
Hmm.
you that I wanted to share, and this might be a little bit earnest, and maybe you'll get to see my sensitive side here, but I was looking for dad news as I do for the show, and came across this article in the Washington Post from this journalist Mark Deason,
Okay.
um, and it was a little opinion piece, little puff piece about his family, about him as a dad, and it's called "My Half Million Miles as a Hockey Dad." And I just want to caveat this with I could not care less. I could care less. I could not care less. Is that I couldn't care less? I could
I
care
couldn't
less.
care less, which is
I
saying I
couldn't
could
care
not care
less
less. Yes.
about hockey,
Yes.
about sports,
Sure.
about anything with using physical brute strength to score points and
Hmm.
show prowess. I just, it's not for me. It's not
Yeah,
my thing. But I
you're
read
not a
this
hockey
article and
guy.
I was like getting choked up because it was so beautiful. Because really, it's sports as the backdrop. So it's called "My Half Million Miles as a Hockey Dad," and I'm just going to read you some excerpts so you can get a sense. So this guy, Mark Thiessen, he starts out the piece like this. He says, "When the final buzzer sounded at the Alfond Athletic Center in Waterville, Maine, my eyes welled up and a lump formed in my throat as I watched my son Max skate off the ice for the last time. His college hockey career had come to an end. Seems like just yesterday he was a toddler, putting on skates for the first time, slipping and sliding across the ice, holding on to an upside down paint bucket for balance. Now he's played his last college game." He goes on, "We made drives to Chicago, Detroit, Nashville, Buffalo, Toronto, Boston, and other cities, most of the time with his brother Jack and twin sisters Ava and Lucy in tow. We listened to the Chronicles of Narnia, Animal Farm, To Kill a Mockingbird, Gordie Howe's autobiography, Mr. Hockey on audiobook, as well as the wonderful Christian radio theater series Paws and Tales. We watched Slapshot and Miracle on the car's DVD player." I don't think he should have been watching while he was driving, but still.
Yeah.
"And countless episodes of Blue's Clues, and between the lines, we talked for hours and sometimes didn't talk at all.
Hmm.
We became rest stop connoisseurs, learning which ones in every state had the best food. We also made some trips to the emergency room for stitches and casts. Nothing prepares you for seeing your child writhing on the ice after being crushed into the boards by a much larger player." And he kind of, there's a lot I'm leaving out, but he goes on about the driving and the specifics about the sports and college games. And it seems like he tried to make it to almost every one of his son's college games. And then think he closes the piece with this. This is where I started to get a little emotional. He said,
Yeah.
the greatest gift you can give your children is your time. I know because I was a child of divorce and did not see my own father much growing up. I was determined when I became a dad I would be present for my kids. I
Hmm.
hope all those hours spent behind the wheel and the glass at the rink showed Max just how precious he is to me, and that there is no way I would rather have spent my time than driving across North America to be with him, watching him play. What I'd give to do it just one more time. I'm getting the chills, and I hate sports, Ollie. I hate them. I don't care.
Yeah, but it's not about that, you know. Actually, it's all about hockey. You're just going to have to learn to accept a cross check into the boards and understand why, you're allowed to fight. And let's figure out why the USA Canada hockey rivalry has now never been more important. So, very interesting that you bring this up because I just rewatched the movie Chef. Have you seen that one, John Favreau?
I
Yeah.
have.
I
I'm sorry, the one where John Favreau makes his love interests Scarlett
Scarlett Johansson.
Johansson
Yeah, that was
and
so
Sofia
pretty.
Vergara, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, yes,
Touche
yes.
on
He
that
wrote,
one.
directed, and then had to find actresses to play his wife and girlfriend, and he's like, "Oh, what should I? I don't know. I
Devastating.
want to make it
Dev-
realistic."
Devastating. It's a classic Favreau role of, a bit of a schlep, if you will. You know what I mean? Schlub. Schlub. He's a schlub.
Get your Yiddish right, Ollie.
I know. I'm here. That's part of it. That's my real agenda for the entire thing. So, but he's a bit of a schlub. I don't know. He's a schmo, and he kind of gets himself together. And the way he gets himself together, and it does cost him his relationship. Well, it doesn't really cost him. I think him and Scarlett Johansson run its course, so it's time to go back to Sophia. But that is a movie about a father bonding with his son, making up for lost time. And it's very interesting that you bring up the same thing. And I think about literally our early conversation about this podcast, how one day, I was all like caught up in just whatever, silliness, work stuff, stress. And I realized I was completely ignoring my kid, and he knew it. And it was my big 23 epiphany of like, oh my God, like all this stuff's happening. I watched my kid graduate fifth grade, which was he leaves lower school, goes into middle school, as they do here in Texas or whatever. And I'm just like, literally, I was like, fuck, this is crazy. This is over. Like, we can't be in this building anymore. Like, kindergarten wasn't that long ago. And I completely as soon as you started that story, the WAPO story, Washington Post. It's, I'm pretty in the lingo. Been around some journalists, but the WAPO story, and it's like I'm watching my son's last hockey game. I was there. You know what I mean? I think it's and I've heard it say it's been said to me before, and you don't want to hear it when you're literally cradling a newborn, but you're down to say it to any younger dad. You're like your kid's childhood will go by in a second. And I think that's just like kind of like how modern life is built. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I gotta go out and work and all this stuff's happening and I don't physically change every year. Hopefully, I don't know. They do all the time. And I mean, that whole cliche, the days are long, the years are short. Now I just think the years are short, yeah, I was zapped in it. And it's so weird. I was watching Chef and I was watching it for a reference, working on a comedy project. You know how it goes. Hollywood's calling again. And I was like, what? Chef just isn't the right reference because, it's kind of more emotional. It is more comedy drama, and I'm looking for the hard funny. Then my next reference piece is going to be Workaholics. But more importantly, I really enjoyed watching Chef. Like, I get emotional thinking about it. It's crazy. And like, it's just you just realize like things that actually matter. And maybe I need to lighten things up and watch Slapshot cuz that's a fine film too. Have you seen Slapshot?
No.
It's Paul Newman, I think.
You think I would like it as someone who doesn't care about sports? Is there enough heart?
I'm literally trying to like throw you a freaking haymaker.
Listen, I love Mighty Ducks because it's a story about perseverance, the underdog.
It's a story about the 90s. It's a story about Emilio Estevez cashing in on the soon-to-be direct-to-VHS sales that really made the movie industry what it was. Man, lucrative. That's what made movies. They're like, oh my God, you're really rich. Now it's like 2-week release, straight to streaming. Crazy stuff. But, I mean, here, for all the dads out there, enjoy the tear jerk. You know what I mean? Enjoy that moment where you're like, oh man. Because it does. It goes by real quick. It's the timing of this is amazing. And on the flip side, I could be sentimental and go, oh, it's all fleeting and soon he'll be gone. But there's also so many opportunities to relish. And one thing I did, one of the proudest moments I've had, maybe ever, for now, maybe I'll top it tonight or a year from now, is on Friday. I went up to my son. I don't know why this entered my brain, Neil, but it did. And keep in mind, he's 13, listens to rap music. He hears bad words. He's comfortable with it now. There was a time where he was like, no, do not say bad words. Now he's cool with it. And I was like, hey, went into his room. I had his iPad, and I was like, hey, do you know about Fat Bastard? I played him, Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, when Dr. Evil introduces Fat Bastard. His face was instantly awash with, like, wonder. Big grin. That night, as a family, we watched Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. And he's like 13,
Sorry,
right?
Original? The first one?
The first one. Numero uno. Numero uno with, whatchamacallit from Rushmore. She's a real garbage can of a head. No, she's like the super beautiful woman. I'm blanking on her name. What's her name? God, it's like, I'm going to say Kylie Ireland. What was her name? Jesus, doesn't matter. We'll get to it later. We watched that movie. He was just sitting in this chair, spinning around, just loving all of it. It's Tuesday. For days now, we've been saying back to each other, it's freaking freezing in here, Mr. Bigglesworth. Like, without any sense of fatigue. Like, the line is fresh. It just gets better and better and better. In fact, in the TikTok era, it's fantastic. So really great moment. I'm literally relishing in. We're in the Austin Powers era over here, so that's what's happening.
That's fun. we're not, as you know, we're not there yet. I don't think my wife would be pleased if I showed them Austin Powers.
Not
I saw it
There's a time.
in theaters in
Mm.
seventh grade. I remember it was like my birthday or birthday week or something, and it was like I want to go see Austin Powers, and a couple of
Yeah.
kids we went, and I thought you were going to say the quote is "Yeah, baby, yeah." Man, it's been a while since you heard that one, huh?
I know.
Yeah,
Well,
baby. But you
yeah.
couldn't not hear that for what, like 5 to 10 years, and then as happens, people were like, "Oh, now you're annoying." It's like
Hmm.
the Michael Scott liking Entourage. It tips, and it's like, "Oh, this is a sign that you are out of
Yeah.
touch." But
Yeah.
it was a seminal piece of pop culture.
Yeah. I mean, massive runaway hit. I feel like that, and then the Sandler movies were actually SNL movies that were massively successful, that were really embraced, made that money.
Yeah.
Billy
If I
Madison.
remember correctly, and I could be wrong, so fact check me on this
Mm,
datosphere,
mm.
but I think Lorne didn't want to make Sandler movies. He did Wayne's World, he did, but so Sandler kind of went off on his own, and that's where Happy Madison was born, and it
Oh,
kind of worked
interesting.
out for him that
Yeah.
the old kind of parent company didn't have a piece of it, if I have my facts correct.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, Lauren's doing okay, but that's interesting because like I remember, I forget about Wayne's World. Wayne's World was successful. I don't know if I consider Wayne's World to be. I'd have to rewatch it before I'm totally dismissive of it. But I was one of the guys because I am a little older than you, Neil. But I watched some movies like Opportunity Knocks with Dana Carvey. That is, at the time, I remember I was grateful to go to the movies, but I'm sure later I was like, it wasn't that funny. And now I could say that movie was probably terrible. God, I mean, there was a Pat movie. I think that terrifically bombed. Probably would not be embraced in today's world, or maybe it would now because we have two sides of values, don't we? And God, I think there was one with oh God, I can't believe it. I can picture
Well, there
a
was Night
Rob
at the
Schneider vehicle.
Roxbury, there was Superstar. There was
Yeah,
never a cheerleader movie. I wish there was a cheerleader movie.
Rob Schneider did some really bad ones. You know what I
No, I
mean?
don't think there were SNL movies though.
Maybe, maybe
But
you're right.
anyways, oh no. Um, Dropped my phone. I thought, speaking of comedy,
Yeah.
I thought we could play a game
Okay.
because, as we've established, this is a not a serious podcast.
Yeah.
Um, it's fun. We have fun here. So,
Yeah.
since this is a podcast about dads, for dads, by
Okay.
dads, let's talk about some dad jokes. Can we do
Oh,
some
here
dad
we go.
jokes?
Sure. Let's go.
All
Dad
right.
joke.
This is a game that our intern came up with, Isaac. It's called
Isaac.
Dad Joke or Bad Joke. And
Mm,
here's how it works. I'm going to hit you with a rapid fire round of jokes. And
okay.
you, Ali Khan, have to decide, is it a dad joke? Classic, corny, respectable. Or is it a bad joke? Just terrible.
Not funny.
Just
Okay.
don't ever say it again. What's wrong
Which
with
I
you?
feel like is a dad joke too, but I'll play the game.
You
I'll
have to
play the
decide.
game.
This is the game. There's
Okay.
rules. There's
Okay.
rules.
I'm gonna
Um,
concentrate.
So, all right, let me put a
Hmm.
minute on the clock.
Okay.
And we have 1 minute. When time is up, we are done with jokes. No more jokes. So
Okay.
I'm going to read a joke, and then you're going to tell me dad joke or bad joke.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Time starts now. Why do dads take an extra pair of socks when they go golfing?
What?
In case they get a hole in one.
Dad joke. It's a dad
What
joke.
do you call a fish wearing a bow tie? Sophisticated.
Bad joke.
Why don't skeletons fight each other?
Why?
They don't have the guts.
Dad joke. That was close. That was
I
close.
told my wife she should embrace her mistakes. She gave me a hug.
That's a bad joke. That's unequivocally a bad
Why
joke.
did the scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in the field.
Ooh, dad joke. Dad joke. Yeah.
Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere.
Dad joke. Close. That was close. That was close.
What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
What?
Supplies!
I mean, I've heard that so many times, so you're gonna have to
Ah,
get the bad joke. It's just, you know what? The milk was expired there. That's all. It's a dad
okay.
joke. That's just the milk was expired. Yeah.
Okay, final count. We got through 7 jokes.
Yeah.
We've
That's
got
good.
1, 2, 3,
Just do
4 were
it.
dad jokes. 3 were bad jokes. 4 dad
Yeah.
jokes. Not bad.
You
I
know,
mean,
I think there's a style to your delivery where wordy is in your favor. You know what I mean? But yeah, like if I could really see it coming, it's like, oh god, that's it depends how abrupt it ends. So this could be a delivery issue, Neil. Let's give the writers room credit. It
yeah.
helps. We see this with SNL now. Write a great opener for the host. You have a great episode. Period. Period.
All right. Well, look, I'm not going to Joe Coy it. I'm not going to blame my writers. I'm not going to
Is
blame
Joe
Isaac the
Coy
intern.
really funny? I saw him perform and I enjoy him, but there are things where I'm like, I almost feel like he'd be, you know what? I want him on the podcast. Can we, I feel,
Yeah,
because he does
he's a
talk a
dad.
lot about it. He's a
Joe's a
dad.
dad. Joe
He's a
Coy's a
dad.
dad.
I
We'll
mean,
bring him on, and you can ask him that, Ollie. You can say, "Hey, I
are
really
you,
brought you here not to talk about fatherhood, as we discussed in our
yeah.
pre-production call. We want to know, are you funny,
Like, do you think
Joe?"
you're funny? Or are you just,
Yeah,
a
I
good
think that'll
guy?
go over well. Okay,
Yeah.
hey, Ollie,
I
this is a
haven't,
dad podcast about dads for dads, where you answer questions from dads. So let's do that, okay?
okay. Yeah. You're right. We're here for
All right.
service.
First question this week. You're gonna like this. This is from Jackson, Mississippi. Can't make this up. Okay. Hey, Ollie.
Yeah.
My wife and I have a ton of couple friends. We've got a big social circle and lots of text threads going on at once. One of our best couple friends we've known since our kids were born, but the last few years they've started to go cold on us out of nowhere.
Oh.
Every other time we try to
Mm.
make plans with them and follow up, they just won't respond. And then a week later, they'll send a funny meme and act like nothing's happened. It's super awkward, so we've all cooled off on inviting them to group hangs with other families. But they found out about one they were excluded from when they saw on Instagram, and now they seem super pissed about it. Ollie,
Yeah.
what's the best approach here? We really don't want a confrontation.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Just when you think high school's in the rear view, somehow it rears its ugly head, right? It's weird. People are crazy. The dynamics, people have feelings, and I personally just don't have the time to hash it out with other adults sometimes. I'm like, ugh, I got enough on my plate. I got enough on my plate. Here's how I roll. And I'm not saying this is just the definitive way to fix it. You know these people, I don't. But obviously you know them well enough to have a party without them and post it on Instagram. So, I just say this. At some point, give it a little time. You know what I mean? Maybe just, offer a large text meetup at a neutral location, include them, and hopefully it'll all smooth over. Because hopefully they're adults and they'll just freaking get over it. And if they're not, and if they're people that really have to talk stuff out, then you can, make that kind of call. But my hope is for me, I am a grown ass man, dog. You know what I mean? I have a kid. I don't need to deal with people who are acting like kids. So, hopefully there's, GTFO, seriously, I'm an adult. My time's limited. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I almost pulled the muscle setting up this ring light. So, give it some time. Time heals all wounds. And, drop a group text and be like, hey guys, we're going to meet at, the blah, blah, blah after the yada, yada, sis, boom, bah. Maybe there's a beer there. Maybe you just get over it. Because that's how I feel about this stuff. Is it ever
What's
really
the
that bad? Is it ever really that bad? You know what I mean?
what's the etiquette though? With the group chats. I mean, when people aren't responding, I mean, it's
Uh,
annoying, right? I mean, people get busy, people miss stuff. We've all done it. We've all been there. But when it becomes kind of a habit, and you're like, these people aren't reliable, we made plans, they're not getting back to us, or
I've seen it on both sides. and I can just say like, I mean, look, some of it too is just like it's so hard to infer tone in the modern age with email and text and stuff like that. And, I just think like people are busy. Let's, maybe it didn't come through. I mean, it's so funny. I enjoy seeing the read only receipts, but I don't I don't set myself up that way. You know what I mean? So, that says a lot too. I just think like, I mean, life's short, man. You know what I mean? I just don't think like why. I mean, look, I'd say this like I just don't need drama in my life when there's plenty of drama to be had. Like I just feel like can we just throw an olive branch off without having some big like, you know, moment? Like hey, let's see, we should get together sometime. Just kind of. Some people crave the drama. I don't. I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man.
It's interesting you mentioned the
I'm
read
a
receipts.
coward.
I too am not. I enjoy seeing the
Yeah.
read receipts,
Yeah.
but I don't have them on myself. But I'll tell you, here's a life hack I've noticed is when you're texting with someone who does have their read receipts on, and that becomes like the habit, and like, oh, they've got their read receipts. If you text them and they don't respond for a long time, and you go, look, it hasn't been read, and you go, oh, they just haven't gotten to it. And I actually think that's like kind of a clever thing. That's how to make read receipts work for you, because you can
Mm.
just leave it unread and just be like, ah, I just didn't get to it. And then, you don't have to respond right away. You can respond 12 hours later or the next day when you finally read it, you know?
That's what's so crazy is what you're trying to get me to do is Google or possibly YouTube how to not how to keep a receipt unread when read is on. That's what you want.
No, no, you just don't click the text. You know when you see a text come up and you just don't click on it, you see the little
Oh,
circle, and
oh,
then it's not marked as read. That's all.
oh. So it's
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, they haven't read it yet. But like they know. They saw it come in. They just are like not going. And it's look, you got to make read receipts work for you.
God, it's a lot. I'd rather. I'm gonna be in the camp where it's like I don't know how to work this thing. I don't know. It's this phone. It's beyond me. Must be getting old. Must be getting old. You know what I mean? I'm gonna blame that. Like it's my age. What would my dad say? I'm technologically inclined. No, deficient. I don't know. He had some catchy word as we like we're entering the age of like, oh yeah, like when you had a flip phone, and so, I remember my friends like, you don't know about T9, and I'm like, no, what's T9? Do you remember T9?
The calculator, right?
No,
No?
T9
T9?
was how you could text on a non-smartphone without a beautiful alphabet or full keyboard, and it would figure out the word. Yeah, this is like a technology that was
Like autofill, right?
yes, but yeah, it was
Okay.
called T9.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to go down memory lane? Whenever I watch The Departed, which for some reason is a movie I enjoyed so much more after its theatrical release. I was disappointed when I saw it. Now I find it
Really?
imminently rewatchable. Yeah, I mean, look, you kind of think, oh, it's going to be like Goodfellas. It totally wasn't Goodfellas. It's fine. Nothing will be Goodfellas. Casino was a
It's
Goodfellas.
hard. It's hard because and this happens with big actors and big films. It's like, you watch The Departed. For me at least, Goodfellas is Goodfellas. They inhabit the characters, even though it's fiction or it's based on a true story. But these are actors.
Perfect.
You
Seamless
watch,
performances. Yeah.
but you watch The Departed, and you're like, "There's Jack Nicholson. There's Leo.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Wahlberg." Like it's really hard to see them. I don't even know their character names. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I could
right.
tell you Henry Hill and
No, you're right. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because that made Ray Liotta a, and Robert De Niro he's literally on the other spectrum of Jack Nicholson to a degree because the way he plays his performances is so understated, even though he always is the same guy. But he's just understated. And Jack Nicholson is like big and broad, but like it's weird. It's like you want, yeah, Jack. I had a guy tell me once he thought Jack Nicholson was the greatest American actor, and I think what he was really acknowledging is like he embodies the American movie star. You're like, oh baby, it's a Jack movie. I want to see Jack be Jack and be entertaining and actually act like, deliver a great performance with dimension, but it's also, I'm going for him. I want him to be, crazy, nuts. He's nuts. He's freaking crazy and kind of charming,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think that's a spot on. And it's funny too. I think that was also an era where it's like Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg. I mean, one guy like 10 years ago was dancing around in his underwear. You know what I mean? And now he's like, and by the way, fantastic performance. But you're right. It all comes off like movie stars doing a really good job. That's what The Departed is. And maybe that's what
And there's room for
irked
that.
me.
Look, there's room for all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that, you know what? Go back to The Irishman and then you'll get some nice, subtle, compelling
Never
performances.
saw it. I heard it was 15 hours and I didn't have time.
Well, it's weird. I mean, that's the other thing, too. Movies aren't movies anymore. You know what? Like a friend of mine says, and it just speaks to the era, just watch all the good parts on YouTube. It's true.
That's where
Wow.
we're at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just, watch the good parts of this on Instagram.
I know.
You don't
My
have to
God,
listen to a podcast.
this episode has been light on dad stuff, heavy on movies, but you know,
Should we just pivot? Should we just forget parenting and just talk about other? Yeah, forget it.
now we're dads on movies. You know what I mean?
Dad's on
It's been a
movies.
great run, 4 episodes, and we realize the writing's on the wall.
Well, I'll bring us back.
Devastating.
We've got a question
Mm.
from David from Queens, and this looks
Oh,
like it's a question about food, one of your great loves and areas of expertise,
it
and
is.
dadding,
Yeah,
also something you know things about.
yeah.
All right, David says, Ali, I used to absolutely love watching Cheap Eats because I was raised to believe that great food doesn't have to be expensive. But now that I'm a dad, I do feel pressure to provide the best for my family. Organic, locally sourced, all that stuff that costs a fortune. I've read all the studies that organic meat's much healthier, and I don't want to cut corners to just save a buck. My wife and I both work, but money's tight, and sometimes I feel bad when I grab takeout or buy store brand stuff. How can a parent on a budget balance being a responsible, health conscious adult without losing their mind over every grocery bill? Come on, Cheap Eats, what do you got?
Man. Well, I'll tell you some basic strategies, right? Um, and I'm someone who literally enjoys, relishes eating meat, and I do think it's actually part of a good, healthy diet. But out the gate, look, chicken and pork are much cheaper. So when you splurge on those things, it's less of a hit. Beef is expensive. Mammals are expensive. Really good seafood is expensive. One of the things we kind of dig, and this isn't, look, I mean, you're always going to have to say to yourself, can you go out there and just buy the most pristine, hard to get product? I mean, is that really practical? It isn't. Think what you want to do if you're trying to be strategic is understand how meat can be an ingredient, a component in a dish versus the main thing. It's like the difference of going to a steakhouse or going to a restaurant that does a grain bowl. The grain bowl could be organic up the wazoo, but if you're not sitting there going, "Oh, I'm having like a 20-ounce ribeye," it's going to be cheaper. So that's one way to look at it. Look at your plate. Even if you're getting organic produce and stuff like that, vegetables are cheaper than animal products. So that's something to consider for sure. The other thing is you got to live your life. My kid likes Raising Cane's. I think it's a waste of money. I would gladly make that sauce at home. That's the only redeeming quality about Raising Cane's. It's okay, but he likes it, so I'm gonna get it. I mean, there's just certain allowances you have to give. Like, no one, I don't know anyone who's just gonna sit there and go, "Oh, I'm only gonna eat this or that." I mean, if you have the means to do it, so be it. But I think that's a little crazy in this world. And look, another thing too is like I think all the people that have really interesting success with both kind of healthy diets, right? Do the old meal prep thing. So if you plan ahead, you won't find yourself in a jam. So I know I actually had this trainer the other day who was like, I mean, it's effort, but he's like Sundays. Him and his wife do all the meal prep, and when you kind of can plan ahead and make food at home, first of all, you're always going to save money at home versus going out to eat, especially now. Period. And when you do buy in bulk, whether it's like, you can. It's kind of crazy, but it's cheap ain't cheap no more. And I don't care if it's ground beef at the supermarket or the fast food spot. So if you're really committed to the long term and you're into meal prep, you get into those co-ops where you're like, I'm going to buy, like, I know some of these people are like, I got a quarter of a steer. They got all this stuff, good quality for a good price in bulk, kind of like the Costco effect, but at a higher operating level of like a sustainable farm, animals raised right. I think you just have to kind of be strategic, plan ahead, buy in bulk, and I think you will find some better gains. I think the biggest thing is it's true. It's like don't go to the grocery store hungry. You know what I mean? Like the meal prep thing, and just kind of doing some research on where you can get good deals and possibly buying in bulk. I think is the long run. I find that it's like I should just go to the grocery store now and spend $50 versus going, it's fine, and then I spend $50 on a single meal, and I have to go back to the grocery store anyways. So that's how I roll.
But where are you at with the organic versus not organic meat? I mean, obviously there's health implications, there's cost implications. Is
Yeah,
there a way to, I mean, is meal prep the way to kind of hack it, or is it just a decision you have to make? I mean,
I
what do
mean
you
it
advise?
it kind of depends on the product. So literally on Sunday we were like, let's have hamburgers, right? And there is this butcher shop that opened up. So kind of funny in Austin, Texas. When I moved here, I was like, oh, I'm in Texas, land of beef. I lived in LA. I had like 20 butcher shops that were like specialty. They could be super high end. They could be kind of like, representative of certain food culture communities, whatever the ethnic grocer, if you will. Came to Austin and I was like, what? There's nothing. Like, this is crazy. I had better meat options in LA than in Austin, Texas. Who knew? But there was one place that was like pretty high end. It's expensive. A lot more expensive than what you're used to based on grocery store prices. Anyways, they closed, a new place reopened. I went there and I'm literally calling my friend and I'm like, you're screwed when you're going to a butcher shop that's called Radius. Like, what does that have to do with food? I'm like, it just feels like an expensive concept. And it was very expensive. They do regenerative farming, which I guess is this whole thing about, raising animals and, making it sustainable. The animals raised right, the environment is thought of, all this stuff. What does that mean? Freaking, they got lamb chops for $60 a pound. I was like, oh my God. Like, normally they'd be 30 rack of lamb. This was 60. I got some ground beef. They were $12 a pound. If I got good ground beef, first of all, the cheap stuff's like six now. Six. So, or the slightly better stuff is 7 or 8 a pound when I'm going to like my baseline grocery store. Maybe it's grass fed or whatever. This was 12, so it was more. But I was like, you know what? I'm only buying so many pounds of this. I'm just saying to myself, I'm gonna like, go to this new business, support it, so I have more options to get it, and hopefully they'll be able to increase their volume, and the prices will come down because that's what happens. Grocery stores you operate at a volume. These farms can work if they get more business to support their practices, right? So I was like, and what was the cost to me? An extra $3-4, to have a hamburger, and it was good. So a burger is an inexpensive way to support like a good beef operation. I think you'll find a lot of these places will do these kind of like off, like lesser known cuts. So like you're not going to get a filet mignon, even like a porterhouse. But, I think the name of the game is like you get these things like tri-tip and stuff like that. That's pretty good. I love me. I mean, we get this just at the grocery store, but the Mary's organic air chilled boneless skinless chicken thighs are awesome, and they're more expensive than regular chicken thighs, but they're not sitting in the goop. And I don't know, like I feel like with chicken, it's not so much that the flavor difference is night and day. It just feels like it's not yucky. You know what I mean? I don't know what it
But when
is.
you mention what is the goo? What is that? Preservatives? That's like I assume to not get you sick, right? So
No,
that it can sit
so
on the shelf longer, or
it's a water solution that increases the weight. So you think you're buying something, but you're not. It's like if you buy a steak and there's a bunch of fat you have to trim off. That's the actual weight you're getting. So when you get just regular chicken, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's reasons of like shipping and preserving stuff like that, but air chilled, you're buying the weight as is. You're actually getting to a degree more for your money. Now you can kind of go, well, it's an extra $3. You can chop it up however you want. But I mean, it's true. Like get chicken thighs over chicken breast. That's cheaper. Whole chicken is the cheaper way to go. Yada yada yada. Listen, all my yadas and my, what's going on with me today?
but
Um,
I have a question, right?
yeah.
Because like so these butchers, because we have a few by us,
Oh, you're in a great place. Jesus.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Brooklyn, New York, baby.
Yeah.
There's obviously the Meat Hook. We've got one by us called Prospect Butcher. And then
Ooh.
and those are like the newer ones that seem cleaner. And then we had one by our old apartment that my wife and I used to say it was run by two brothers who seemed like Law and Order SVU characters. One guy would just stand
Interesting.
outside every day, say hello to only the women who walk by. Morning. Good
Wow.
morning. And
Wow.
like never a man walked by, no hello, no salutation.
Mm-hmm.
And they just looked like great. They were, it was like, we would say like it was the type of people, where, if a detective was interviewing, someone nearby, they'd be like, yeah, the brothers who own the butcher. Anyway, so we have like the old school butchers, we've got the new school butchers.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, obviously, you get a little bit higher quality product. They've got bigger overhead. They can't mass produce it.
Yeah.
But I also know that there's this like stereotype of local grocers that is like real hipster and yuppie, and that you're kind of getting ripped off. Is that a BS narrative that was created to try to get people not to shop local, or is there some truth to that? Like, how do you know if you're walking into a butcher, oh no, this is actually like a really good deal. They got it from the farm. They have different expense, or just like, oh,
I
they're ripping
mean,
us off.
it's hard to like, this is the thing is like, I think a part of that is a reflection of the clientele of these places, which I'm always happy to make fun of. Like, like how did we get to a place where Erewhon has like a $40 smoothie or whatever it is? It's like, well, because there's people who will pay for it. Look, I can't attest to this butcher shop that I haven't been to, but I have like attended some. I went to this South by Southwest food event by a company called Force of Nature, and what they do is they pair farmers with basically farmers and meat processing to deliver this kind of high quality meat, and they get the distribution to various places, their own label, so you can buy from them, plus they go to other places. And it was very interesting to hear the person who started this company, this person from Whole Foods, like really talk in detail about what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and basically challenge the current food ways. And, this is where we'll get down into like a proper food nerd podcast. But like, there are major, massive companies that are remarkable in creating what they've created, which is a seemingly endless supply of meat at a very low market price that we've all become accustomed to. Okay. But then what happens is you're like, oh, well, have you ever seen what that's like? Cargill, Swift. And I'm not going to call those places out because we, the consumers, help build them and create them. So, you don't have to be like, oh, we're all complicit. But it's like, look, people bought it. That's why it exists, period, point blank. But then, you start to go, well, How do you do things at scale? What happens if an animal is sick? We have to, protect our investment. And here come the antibiotics. And here come, tales of like, oh my God, there was this thing that happened. And you hear all this, kind of scary, kind of dangerous stuff that happens because there's these large scale operations, and they are animals, you know what I mean? And they can get sick and they can spread disease. That's just a possibility, right? That happens. So I was quite taken by, how these guys are trying to challenge that, because it's hard. And it does come down to a degree of the consumer level. And that's why I'm like, I'll go buy some expensive hamburger. Basically, you're saying, I'm going to spend an extra $4 for me to make hamburgers at home in this day and age, just to try it out, like, I don't know if I'd make meatloaf with it, but there's a certain, like, it's a Sunday thing, let's make it special. And I think it is important to have more variety, and we're not just reliant on certain stuff. So you could always learn. It's the internet, you know what I mean? You can learn about these farmers and stuff like that. But I actually say, if you go to a farmer's market, you can meet those people. And it's hard because, yeah, it's more expensive than the grocery store. They can't do what the grocery store can pull off. But if you want to know about where your food came from, if you are concerned or you're curious, that's an interesting thing to do, But, like, don't think it's just because you'll eat it and it'll be like, oh, I had supermarket beef and then I had Japanese Wagyu. That's not really what that's about. What it's about is just feeling kind of more confident that this system is better for the animal, better for the environment, better for your body. So it's more of a philosophical thing than just a flavor thing. And I think that's fair because, you're like, what? These people invited me to go see them harvest a turkey and also like a bison. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I'm like, And the guy's like, but you love meat. You're a big carnivore. Like, that's part of it too. And I think there's some real truth to that. We're so insulated from we're like, whatever, I just went to the store. It was all there. Someone did all the dirty work for us. And, there's something to be said about that. Like, look, when the grid goes down, not a doomsdayer, not a prepper, I'm screwed. But when the grid goes down, you're going to wish you spent more time at the trout farm, because when you get hungry, Neil, all of a sudden you're going to be like, here comes the shank, So, I don't know, man. Look, you're also talking to a guy who I watched my grandma kill a chicken. That was traumatizing.
What did the chicken do to her?
Live long enough for us to eat dinner. And it was really delicious. I hated growing up, hated Indian food, Bengali food. That was delicious. I was like I was like, because we went to catch it. And then she had the knife out, and I was like, whoa, it's horrible. Yeah.
Shout out to Ollie's grandma.
Oh, yeah. Crazy, right? But that's what it is, man. I don't know. So,
hey, wait,
yeah.
What's that company at South by that you were talking about? What are they called?
Force of Nature. Yeah, not gonna lie. I'm like, hey, I love burgers. Send the elk my way. I don't know. I do think I will say this. I'm the first person to crack some Portlandia jokes about the butcher shops that you're probably going to in Brooklyn because it's funny. But it's better to have those places and the Aldis, because people just have the option. People should have an option. And, I'm not going to sit there and yuck anyone's yum, but I'm in a position where it's like, I'm going to go and spend a lot more on hamburger, because if this place is gone, it sucks, it's weird. It's like, you don't, you want to have better options. And I think it's true. There's something to be said about large scale farming and the cost. There's another cost. You're saving on your transaction, but there's another cost involved, so yeah. I got deep there. You get this food stuff, Still
Something
got it.
to it. Something to it.
I still got it.
Hey, let's take one more question. I'm going to read you one more question from one more listener, and then we'll be on our merry way. Go
Mm.
be dads. Go do dad stuff. Uh, Michael from Waterloo, Iowa, writes, I've been offered a job that could change everything for my family, but it would require a big move across the country. It's a lot more money. It's a big step up for me. I work in IT security, by the way. But we all love our lives here. My kids love their friends and their school and their teams. They're in seventh and ninth grade. The job would help me make a lot more money for their college and whatever else they need, but is it even worth it if they end up hating me for it? My wife works remote. She's leaving the ball in my court since she doesn't want to be responsible for the decisions of my career. I'm really stuck, Ollie. I can't sleep. I'm worried my kids are going to hate me. What do you think? How do I weigh the pros and cons of career versus family happiness and stability? Thanks.
Well, I mean, I think the best way to look at it is because your wife seems to have given you the pass to a degree. Let's focus it like this: seventh and ninth grade. To me, if they're both your kids were seventh grade or younger, I'd be like, time to go. Um, Ninth grade's tricky, but it's not impossible to say, hey, we may have to move. I think that it's all about, look, I mean, in this day and age, I think pursuing financial stability, and you'd have to do some real homework on this job. You got to make sure it's really concrete and worth it because we all know things, the startup can fade, you know what I mean? So, but I feel like when I kind of hear stories like this, or, a big thing is like, that's hard if your kid's like a junior. You're like, really? One more year. You know what I mean? There you go. Ninth grade, you're just at that interesting cutoff. We had some friends who were, their kid was going to our school, the school we go to now. And, they kind of got to a point where like, God, it's just, the last few years, cost of living's really risen. And they're like, is it really worth it to like, A, stay in this private school, B, kid's a heck of an athlete. Like he plays baseball year round. Like his kids playing baseball. And the truth is there are better schools, public schools, certain schools that would be better for his potential sports career that could certainly turn into a collegiate career, right? And it was ripping off the Band-Aid, but they were like, we're going to do it. He was much younger than seventh grade, but things happen and you move on. I mean, your family, your kids aren't the first kids to be like, we had to move. In fact, if one needs to simply look at the plot, the premise of Beverly Hills 90210, and it all worked out for them. I mean, sure, there was some growing pains, but clearly leaving Minnesota for Beverly Hills introduced them to lifelong friends. So, you know, think about that. Think about what the Walshes did. Okay, that might hurt a little bit because I'm
Got a nice
mocking. Am I
job at a
mocking?
local diner,
Yeah,
writing the school paper.
I was gonna say Max's, but that's Saved by the Bell. Oops. Look, I think your kids are gonna like Bayside High. No, look, I
The
mean,
Peach Pit. Come on.
you, you,
Give Nat his due. Nat of the Peach Pit.
look, if the job's really worth it, I think, and these are just hard numbers you have to really crunch out. Hard numbers. I think you're just at a time where, certainly for the seventh grader, but probably the ninth grader, it's not impossible to go to the school. I mean, look, you got to talk about it. You got to like also kind of not just go, hey, are you okay with this? But are you okay with this? And let's check it out, experience it. It's got to be a good fit. A lot of kind of little intangibles there, but it's certainly not out of the realm of reason.
Yeah,
Again,
it's a tough one. Did you move as a kid at all?
no, no, I didn't. And it's funny, like, yeah, same house, all that stuff, and you know, life isn't like that. Life isn't just one house for. I mean, look, some people. We were at a wedding in Blanco, Texas, and we after the wedding, which is like not far away, but it's different. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's some cool breweries and it looks neat, but it's small town Texas, and there's a lot of small. There's a lot. There's no shortage of small town Texas. There's no shortage of small town America. So we went into this like bar after the wedding, and this was, I mean, people were smoking in the bar. I didn't think you could do that anymore. It was one of those, and I think me being kind of like, you know, used to kind of cosmopolitan urban environments, I had my own kind of judgments or whatever. But I was like, yeah, let's go to this little dive bar in small town Texas. And I remember this woman came up to us. Could not have been nicer. She was like, "Oh my God, you guys are such a cute couple." And they're like, "Where are you from?" Because obviously we were not from Blanco. And she goes, "Yeah, where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from here, born and raised here." There are people like that. There are people that don't leave the nest, if you will, but life ain't like that. I don't think so. You know, doesn't hurt to see what it's like to be a Walsh, and to make the big jump from, Brandon, we're not in Minnesota anymore. We're in Beverly Hills. It's different.
Yeah. Going to be
And
quite the culture shock heading.
yeah,
I don't even know where they're moving, but we're going to assume it's Hollyweird.
yeah,
He's moving his family from Iowa to West Beverly.
yeah. That's the other thing too. To be fair, in all honesty, you always have to. Yeah, Iowa definitely probably has a lot to do with Blanco, Texas, to a degree, small town or whatever. Like, yeah, if you're going to like Chicago or Kansas City, even that might be a culture shock, but that could be a good thing. That could be a good thing. You never know. Maybe it's destiny. Maybe your kids will take to it. I mean, seventh grade, ninth grade, I don't think that's too late. Honestly, if your kid was straight up like 10th is tricky, but junior year, I'd be like, man, just one more year, you write it out. But it's weird. I mean, I this is something we've talked about is, we moved to Austin. We've been here 10 years. Neither my wife and I have the intention of staying here forever. Now, I'm not in the forever game in general. But what's funny is, like, our son has lived here since he was 3. Chances are he's going to stay here through high school. Unless his podcast blows up and Spotify is like, you've got to move to Beverly Hills and live out the Walsh scenario.
It's
And
the only place you can record podcasts now.
yeah, absolutely. And to
Beverly Hills.
fulfill this Walsh scenario that I've clearly set up is what I really want out of my life. And, say we move. I'm sure he'll be like, man, like, I mean, this is where he spent his formative years. He'll have a desire here. He may stay here. It's crazy. And the question is, do you want your kids to be tied to Iowa forever when they could be living a life going to West Beverly, Did you watch 90210? Was that on your radar?
Me, of course, yes.
Just making
yes.
sure.
Um,
Making sure you were probably 5 at
yeah.
the time.
Did I catch him, in reruns after school to catch up with, Old Man Khan? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Fair enough.
No, I'm very familiar with the canon of
Yeah.
of Aaron Spelling's later work, including 90210.
One of my big LA moments, this is like 90s when like all this stuff really mattered. You're like, ooh, it's a celebrity. I was at Kinko's and Ian Ziering pulls up in his Corvette.
Ian.
Is it really? How do you
Ian
know that?
Ziering.
How
Come
do you,
on.
I mean,
Because I
like,
have all this useless knowledge up here, which is why we're doing this podcast.
Ian.
And we're not like making money, as doctors or finance people. I don't know.
I didn't know his name was Ian.
Ian Ziering.
Oh, yeah. He pulled up in a black
Ziering.
vet.
All right. So what was Ian Ziering making copies of?
I mean, I just saw him in the parking lot.
Oh.
My other big sighting at Kinko's, oddly enough, having to just reference Austin Powers. Seth Green. Saw Seth Green at Kinko's, and someone went up to him and he goes, "Yeah, man, and he goes, "Oh, it's cool. I appreciate that." Dude, to
You
be,
appreciate being told that he's Seth Green. Hey, man, you're Seth Green. Yeah, thank you so much.
well,
I am.
you know how it goes. You're like, "Yeah,
Sure.
you're doing great," and he goes, "Oh, I appreciate that." you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this
that's
may
good.
have been before Can't Hardly Wait. So, was he on
Oh,
Buffy? Was that what he did? Was
yeah, yeah, I think so.
that was not a hearty? Yeah, that's not like if I was flying a plane and you were at ground control saying pull the stick up. I'd be like, I don't think you're confident. That was not a
Yeah,
confident.
we're gonna land this thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
we
yeah.
get there.
Good chance to survive. Good chance.
Yeah,
Water
I think we
landing.
leave it there. Hey, let's land this plane, Ollie. What do you have to say to all the dads out there?
Hey, you have been doing great this entire time. Did you know that? Because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, this dad likes you. Classic, Jack Handy. Boom. Quote the best. Quote the best, be the best. Put that on my mug.